Good morning. My name is Susan Hendershot Guy, and I'm the Executive Director of Iowa Interfaith Power and Light, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this press conference this morning. The mission of Iowa Interfaith Power and Light is to inspire and equip people of faith to become leaders finding solutions to climate change. This morning, we are pleased to release our 2016 Statement by Religious Leaders in Iowa on Global Climate Change, which was signed by 140 clergy and other faith leaders representing 17 different religious traditions, 112 congregations or organizations, and 44 cities in Iowa. The statement begins by stating that global climate change is one of the most pressing challenges facing our world today, and that we feel a moral obligation to speak on this Earth Day on behalf of those whose voices are not heard, the most vulnerable in our society, including the poor, children, and future generations. Every faith tradition has something to say about caring for Earth and about caring for our neighbors. Climate change impacts both. It is a threat multiplier, exacerbating conditions about which people of faith care deeply. Issues such as hunger, clean water, immigration and refugees, disaster relief, and conflict. We know, however, that we do not need to sacrifice jobs or the economy to care for our environment. We are proud of the bipartisan support here in Iowa for wind energy, which has created more than 7,000 jobs in our state. We know that other clean energy technologies, such as solar and energy efficiency, also enjoy that same support. We have an opportunity here in Iowa to do even more as we incorporate these technologies into our planning on both the Clean Power Plan and the Iowa Energy Plan. You may be wondering, though, whether as faith leaders who are talking about climate change, we are being too political. My response to that is that we are not here advocating for a particular party platform or candidate for office. But the political arena is where decisions are made about how we live together as a civil society. And so ultimately, politics is about people. What we do today is to cast a vision about how we care for those who are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change and what we can do to live out that vision and care for the common good. It will take all of us working together to find meaningful and lasting solutions. I've asked 4 of the faith leaders who signed on to this year's statement to speak this morning, and I would like to introduce them to you now in the order in which they'll be speaking. Bishop Richard Pates is the 9th Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Des Moines, having been installed in that post on May 29, 2008. He has served as chairman of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops International Justice and Peace Committee from 2011 to 2014, and he currently serves as chair of the Iowa Catholic Conference. Reverend Zuiko Redding has been the resident pastor at Cedar Rapids Zen Center in Cedar Rapids since the spring of 2000. At the center, she leads Zazen, or meditation. She gives sermons, teaches classes, and works with the congregation to develop the center. As part of the community, she gives talks on Buddhism, ministers to Buddhist groups in the Iowa prisons, and works with the center membership in community service projects. She is also active in the Interreligious Council of Lynn County. Reverend Steve Mathonnet-VanderWell, along with his wife Sophie, have been the co-pastors of the Second Reformed Church in Pella since 1999. He teaches religion adjunctly at Central College and holds a PhD in theological ethics from Boston College. He is also an editor of Perspectives, a journal of Reformed thought, and its daily blog, The 12. He has 2 adult children and a new granddaughter. Dr. Gerald Sorokin has been executive director of the University of Iowa Louis Shulman Hillel Foundation since 1999. In that capacity, he works with the Jewish community on campus and in the Iowa City area to develop educational, cultural, religious, and community service projects. He is active in interfaith programming and is the chair of the Association of Campus Ministers, a professional organization at the University of Iowa. So with that, I will turn it over to Bishop Richard Pates.
Thank you, Susan, and just want to acknowledge the remarkable work that your organization does and continuing to build up a real public understanding of this issue and enabling us to move forward in something that's very critical for our time. So thank you, and thank you for all that you do. One of the questions that is frequently asked in conjunction with Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si on care for our common home is, why is he so outspoken on what is basically a scientific question to be resolved through the political process? The further question is posed, why the clarion call to action and his insistence that this action be urgently attended to? In response, of course, the Holy Father regards the issue as to be also moral in nature, and that there are compelling questions of justice embedded in the question, and that there isn't a great deal of time before climate change and its deleterious effects become irreversible. A simple analogy might help to understand the Pope's path. An individual is walking as dawn emerges and notices flames and smoke coming out of a house along his route. Motivated by a sense of solidarity and natural concern, he rushes to tell the occupants so they might be rescued and the fire extinguished. Rousing the adults, he explains the situation to them. Their first response is sleepy gratitude to the informant, but it being summer, they say they have noticed the warmth, but it is only the natural cycle of the season, and besides, their air conditioning is malfunctioning. If the season is winter, then the explanation is that El Nino is here. Moreover, the furnace has been consistently throwing off more heat than needed. They adamantly refuse to tell the sleeping children in the face of what they consider a false alarm. After all, their youngsters need their rest, to which they are entitled and from which they should not be disturbed. What Pope Francis is saying to us is that 90% of reputable scientists testify that Mother Earth and its atmosphere are overheating. Action must be taken, or dire circumstances are in store. In the case of climate change, thank God, alert respondents to the call to action have been highly effective. The remarkable news this past week of Mid-America's commitment to 85% production of energy through wind power demonstrates that positive action can effectively and efficiently be taken. Rallying to take comparable action by others in similar circumstance means that doomsday can be possibly avoided. From this perspective, future generations will have an opportunity for a reasonable lifestyle based on intelligent response and not sleep away. The house, our Earth, is equivalently on fire. The action of Mid-American Energy in helping to put the fire out, and then others beginning to rehabilitate our seriously damaged house, can restore it to livability. Shouldn't we be grateful to Pope Francis and other leaders of his stature for the steadfast courage of sounding the warning? In turn, can't we all of us here, take on the role of firefighters and then work at Mother Earth's restoration? Thank you.
I think this is about right. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm honored to be invited here by the Iowa Interfaith Power and Light. This is a wonderful organization doing really, really fine work. And I hope we can continue together for many, many years. This is, as the bishop says, a very crucial thing. We believe in our faith tradition that our lives and the lives of all beings are created and sustained by this vast and mysterious completeness of which we are an interdependent part. We are interdependent beings, intimately living the shared life of the universe. We can never break this connection. When the earth becomes sick, we become sick, because we are part of it. One of our precepts is not to take what is not freely given. We have, in the past, taken resources from people with less power than we, and from the earth, to provide ease and comfort for ourselves, forgetting the needs of others. It is our responsibility to be mindful of the needs of the earth by not depleting the lives of beings, both human and other, through our desire to serve ourselves. Let us understand that all things exist for their own use, not for ours. If we do not sustain each and everything, trees, water, animals, mountains, farmland, we are dealing in theft of lives, and ultimately we are stealing our own lives. We stand side by side with compassionate people of all religious traditions in seeking to take care of the world and in working to avoid harm to all beings. Human beings are neither good nor bad, but simply human. When we open our eyes to reality as it truly is, we naturally seek to be nurturing and non-harming, and we find peace and delight in serving all things. In the 1990s, our denomination in Japan developed the Green Plan to raise awareness of caring for the earth. Part of this plan is the 5 principles of green life. 5 things we all can do to help restore the health of the ecosystem. First, protect the green of the earth. Earth is the home of life. Second, do not waste water. Water is the source of life. Third, keep the air clean. It is the plaza of life. Fourth, do not waste fuel or electricity. They are the energy of life. And fifth, coexist with nature. The natural world is the embodiment of the Buddha mind. So let us all do these things together in honor of the natural world. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for the invitation. So I am saying why Christians, or specifically this Christian, is concerned about climate change. And I believe that I and all people have been given a wonderful and special connection with creation. The creation stories in Genesis tell me that my relationship to creation should mirror God's relationship with me. God cares for me, watches over me, is interested in me, delights in me, even sacrifices for me, and of course loves me. So I, in turn, then, try to live in that way toward creation, caring, watching out for, protecting, delighting, being curious, even sacrificing, and most certainly loving creation. I want to treat creation the way God treats me. Second, my religious tradition tells me that Jesus was always especially concerned about those we sometimes called the least of these, the weak, the neglected, the outcast, and the poor. And we know that climate change will have a deeper and more painful impact on these people, and it already has. As sea levels rise, they will be the ones displaced by flooding of low-lying areas. Famines and other shortages that are the result of climate change will impact them the most. The weak and the neglected and the poor will suffer the brunt of increasingly violent weather patterns, blizzards, tornadoes, cyclones, droughts. And of course, while wars have always a complex reasoning behind them, as we've recently seen the stream of refugees come out of East Africa and the Middle East, many people have observed that part of the reason they need to find a new home is because of climate change. Because I believe we need to be on the side of the weak and the neglected and the poor, I believe we need to do something about climate change. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Susan, for inviting me to speak and being part of this press conference with our distinguished colleagues here. As you may know, tomorrow night is the beginning of Passover, the Jewish festival of freedom. And around the world, Jewish families, Jewish communities will be assembling around their dinner tables and retelling the story of the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt many, many years ago. One important section of the telling of the story involves the Torah, the Hebrew Bible's command on how we respond to children of different capabilities and different styles. The Torah says there are 4 children: the wise, the wicked, the simple, and the one that does not know how to ask a question. The Coalition on the Environment in Jewish Life has adapted the traditional Passover Haggadah, the traditional Passover text, to ask, how do we address climate skeptics according to the same categories of the 4 children? And I think that it would be useful to read what the Coalition on the Environment in Jewish Life tells us about these 4 children. The wise child. This child knows that climate change is real and that they must act to combat its effects. The wise child has read that global temperatures and sea levels are rising every year, that more species are becoming endangered, and that more communities are experiencing extreme weather events and decreased crop viability. The wise child sees this and is motivated to combat climate change in any way they can. The wicked child. The wicked child has read about climate change and is aware that scientists predict a whole range of negative effects if we do not reduce global carbon emissions. But the wicked child doesn't think the issues caused by climate change apply to them. They believe climate change will only affect the poor and the vulnerable in places they will never visit. They remain unconcerned. The simple child. The simple child is overwhelmed by the idea that humankind could be radically altering the entire face of the earth. They don't believe it's possible that scientific predictions are accurate. This child simply ignores the evidence that the problem is real at all. The one that does not know how to ask. This child is much more like the wise child than we may typically imagine. The one who does not know how to ask has also read about climate change and knows that environmental degradation and the effects on the global population are a real and present threat. Unlike the wise child and much more like the simple child, this child is overwhelmed. How is this possible? This child might ask, how can I alone prevent this global catastrophe? There is an answer for each of these children. We can look to the wise child and ask them to be a leader in their community and congregation, spearheading environmental initiatives like recycling, composting, and energy efficiency. We can tell the one who does not know how to ask to follow the wise child and learn about work they can do in their congregation, or even their home, and the small changes they can make in their life, like changing their light bulbs to LEDs or CFLs, or cooking at home to reduce their personal emissions. To the wicked child and to the simple child, we have to show the growing body of evidence that climate change is real and is affecting not just the poorest and vulnerable among us, but will reverberate through all communities as its impact grows. We're taught that God created human beings in the image of God. That doesn't mean that we have long white beards, as the picture on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. That's not the image of God. The image of God is the one who created the world, who is working to improve it. Our job as human beings is to continue that work. It's said in the sayings of our ancestors that we're not obligated to complete the task, but nor are we free to desist from it. Climate change is a task that all of us carry with us. The question isn't whether it's real. The question isn't whether we need to try to reverse it and combat it. The question is, what kind of responsibility are we as people going to take, and how can we take the moral stand that's necessary to accomplish as much as possible? Thank you.